Hi guys, welcome to my channel and today we're gonna talk about sources of long-term finance. If you have learned corporate finance, you need to raise the funds for the company so that your company can invest or operation so that have short-term and long-term finance. But today in this video, we'll just talk about long-term finance. So let's get started. So first, let's talk about what is the long-term finance sources. Let's go to the definitions, and this is just the things that make it easy, not the professional definitions. So long-term finance sources are any source for raising the funds more than 5 years. So imagine like this. If you have short-term finance, which like probably within 1 year, so it's like working capitals. You use that funds to manage your operational expense. It's just like very short term, so you get that fund and you pay back in a very short amount of time. But if you have purchased for a very big manufacturer, you want to expand the business in the long run, you need long-term finance because that will require you to pay in the long period of time. So for example, if you purchase a lands or buildings and it's like it take like 5 years to have return on investment from that big investment, you when you if you just use short-term finance, when the building doesn't generate return on investment like less than 1 year, you have no money to pay back. But if you use long-term finance sources, you have money to pay back because now, like for example, 10 years later, the business, the building that you purchased now have generated the return on investment and you can pay back the creditors or investors with the money that you get from it. So this is the definition of long-term finance sources. Just remember one thing. Long-term finance sources invest into if you want to invest in long-term projects, you need long-term funding sources. Now, let's move on to there are four sources of long-term finance. So, to classify about how we raising funds or what the way, what the methods of where does the money come from, they classify it into four sources: equity shares, preference shares, retained earning, debentures, and long-term loans. Now let's explore each of those further. So in the equity share, imagine you are the person, you invest money in the company, and when the company they invest in some business opportunities, they get profits and they pay back you dividends. Why we call it equity? Equity means you are the owner of the company, and you have the control over that company. So imagine like this. You invest some part, the company was divided into different parts, and take, you hold that one amount of it, you have one part of it, one part of the company, and when the company get profits, your profits also depends on the part that you hold. If you hold a lot of part, you get lots of interest, you get lots of profits from that part. But if you hold very small amount of it, you just get very little. This case is all about the company issues the stocks in the market, in the financial market, and you are the person, you buy the stocks. So if the company lost, you lost too because now you're owning the company. If you remember the sole proprietary business models, if you lost, you also lost the company and you lost profits and even your personal asset. But in this case, it's different because you don't own the whole company. You own a part of it. So when the company get lost, you don't get the money back, but it's just in that the part that you invest in the amount of money that you invest in, you just lost that amount, but you don't lose your whole personal finance, personal asset. So that is what I call limited liability. So now if you have understand it, remember in here you are owner of the company and you have the control voting right in the company. Now let's move on to preference shares. Preference shares is kind of the same as equity shares, but it's a little bit different. In here, you also invest in company, and when the company get profits, you get fixed dividends. You don't get dividend fluctuated based on the company doing well or not. You get fixed dividend, and in here, if the company lost, they still have to pay for you. But the order of paying is different. They need to pay for another like creditors, like debt owner first before they can pay it for you. They need to pay for creditors, for banks, for financial institution first, and then if they have left money, they can pay for you. But if they don't have money, you may receive nothing. But you still get accumulated dividends. That means that if this year the company get lost, you get paid nothing. Another year company get lost, you get paid nothing. And in the third year, the company get profit. They need to pay you the previous 2 year fixed dividends. And in here, it's also different because now you a little bit the same as creditors. You have limited control. If in the first case, equity say they have owner control, they have loss of control, and in here you just have limited control. So now that's why called is preference shares. That means that when the company get lost, you get more money for you are the person who get the money paid back first after creditors, but you will have more priority in paying before first rather than if you choose equity share. Alright, so now let's move on to retained earning. This part is pretty simple. Retained earning is that if you get profits, you invest in some business opportunity and you get profits, you keep some part of the profit, reinvest in your business. So for example, if you get profit, some part of the profit you pay back to shareholders to dividends, and you pay back to creditors with interest rate. And then you still have some part of the money, some part of it you just gonna keep invest in your company, and some part of it you invest in other business opportunity. This case illustrates that, for example, in the rainy day, if you have a summer money, you invest all of that summer money in the project. But if it doesn't work out, the company will be suffering. But if you keep some part of the money, and if the project doesn't work out, you still know how to manage your operations, how to invest in another opportunity. So that part is about keep the sum of the profits like to make it safe. And now let's move on to the ventures. The company can also use the venture for sources of raising funds. So in the debentures, you imagine like they like creditors and they have no control of the company. They still invest in the company and your company invest in some business opportunity. And if this leads to profits gaining, they get fixed interest no matter if they doing well the business or they doing not well, you still get fixed interest. And the difference in here in the debentures, the company is obligated to pay. That means the company have to pay for the creditors. You cannot not pay for like in the equity share. In here you have to pay because they are creditors. But the creditors they have no control of the company. Now let's move on to long-term loans. The long-term loans is kind of the same as creditors, but in here the long-term loan is the person who invests in the company, or I say let the company borrow money in financial institutions and bank. The difference in here is that in the two other cases, the company raising funds by issuing bonds and stocks. But in this case, the company didn't issue anything, but they borrow money from bank. Bank is the person who give the money for the company. Now, if the company get money, they invest in some projects and they get profit. So they need to pay the fixed interest to the banks, and they also is obligated to pay. So now you have understand that the bank's creditors and the shareholder, there are two sources to get the money. Either it is through debt or either it is through equity. So let's look at the payment priority. What I say is that the payment, what they need to pay first. Obviously, the company need to pay for banks and creditor first. That means they need to pay for long-term loans and they need to pay for the ventures first. And later they will pay for preference shares, and the last is equity shares. Equity is the one pay last if the company gets something. But in the profits gaining, the equity shares will gain lots of profits, a lot of profits. If the company get lots of profits in the equity share will be fluctuate, and you will get like in the equity shares if you are taking risk person. If the company get lots of money, get lots of profit, you are the one who get lots of money too. But if your company get lost, you guys lost too. But in case of banks and creditors, if the company get lots of profit, they still get that either the fixed amount of money, nothing change. And if the company get lost, they still get the money back. So in the bank creditors, you are more like safe player. So what about control and voting level? You can see that the control and voting level will increase a lot in the equity shares if you hold equity shares, you have lots of control in voting levels because at that time you are owner of the company. But if you are the ventures or banks, you have less control level. Or if you are preference shares, you have less control level than equity shares. So now you have understand there are many sources to, if we gonna sum up as two main sources, it would to debt or equity. So to raising funds, the company cannot operate alone on its own, but they need money from either from investors or to creditors to operate their business, to invest in some business. So finance is all about how to manage the cash inflows and outflows, how to make decision that the money come in and come out the most in the most efficiently and in the most effectively. So thank you for watching my videos. Thank you a lot, and this video was conducted under the course of corporate finance from group 5, and thank you for watching my channel.